Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
hey guys,
Hello.
101 episodes.
That's right.
Yeah.
101. We're in the triple digits for real now.
I thought we were quitting after last week. I thought that was the plan.
Yeah.
Imagine you're surprised when I just showed up at your door today.
I was like, okay, I'll get something ready real quick.
Well, hopefully this show doesn't feel like we quit last week. I don't think it does.
101 episodes. This episode, by the way, brought to us by the good people at Raytheon. That's
yeah.
right. Raytheon, featuring the brand new Mark 7 drone. When you think invulnerable, death-dealing flying robots, think Skynet. I mean, Raytheon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
thanks,
glad to
Raytheon.
have them on board. And please don't hit execute.
Don't drone me.
Don't throw me, bro.
Once we get through the drone segment, this week we're going to talk about a few things, and they're more after we recorded. They're more interrelated than one would have believed to begin with. So, I am going to talk about what possibly could be the origin of the fiery furnace.
Yes, you are.
And yeah, then I'm going to
And
talk.
you're gonna talk about my new kitchen implement.
That's
right.
Spice rack
a
from
real
hell.
time saver.
I'm going to talk
If you've got a beef.
That's right. I'm going to talk about just, a very sad story and why religion makes everything shitty.
Yeah, you are. And I am going to continue telling the story that I used to think was the best story in the Bible, only because it had my name in it.
Until we read it, and then
We read it, and it turns out maybe I was wrong.
It turns out there are no best stories in the Bible. So, so come along, come and worship other gods with us, and let's just have a real hootenanny.
Hey, Uncle Doug,
Here am I.
you know what garden we haven't been to for a little minute?
Eden, Gethsemane. I can fuck that word.
Oh, you know what though?
Sesame.
I'm probably wrong. Is this a graveyard or a garden? We put them right next to each other, and it's hard to tell.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover.
We bury a lot of people in the garden.
We just moved the headstones.
Pretty much, yeah. This one is the graveyard.
Okay.
The gods.
Yeah.
graveyard of the
gods.
gods.
So I got a god for us, guys, and this week, I decided it's been a while. Once again, I'm going to push through the creaky old gate of one of our most cherished plots of silliness here on The Heretic, the graveyard of the gods. We're in a very Charlton Heston mood this morning. So,
And every one of us does a terrible Heston impression, so that's
but
great.
everybody's Heston impression is good, even if it's terrible.
Yes, indeed.
It's like a Schwarzenegger impression.
Yeah, exactly. So, unlike the last time, speaking of Schwarzenegger, I ventured into this repository of dead, useless old things. I won't be pulling a cheeky trick like I did by blathering on about Crom, the fictional god of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You tricked
and
us.
Conan the Barbarian. This week, the spirit moved me to go with a classic. One of the big baddies of the first and by far most important half of the Bible, the Old Testament.
Ooh.
And with that spirit, with what the spirit delivered to me via a burning in my increasingly ample bosom, was the inspiration to talk about a god whose own bosom burned both brightly and heinously, if the stories are to be believed, and the jury is still out on that. So today, of course, I speak of Moloch.
Oh,
Moloch.
Yeah,
That's
I was
scary.
waiting for it. Yeah, like a really terrified reaction.
Yeah.
Skun dun dun.
So for those of you out there with the incredible and unlikely good fortune of never having read or even heard of the Bible, Moloch is one of those names many people have read or heard but don't know much about, other than he was an old god and therefore a bad one, and or maybe a demon. Modern ears maybe have picked up the name by listening to pretty much any evangelical goober naming him in relation to Planned Parenthood, or Glenn Beck's constant recitation of his name and that of his contemporary Canaanite co-god Baal, whom we discussed in
yeah.
episode 9, when talking about the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education, George Soros, the Teletubbies, or the fictional War on Christmas. Yeah, Glenn really loves to trot out Moloch.
It's got to be a tough world to live in where all your dials only go to 11.
Yeah, that's right. Poor stupid Glenn.
You'll break out crying at any moment.
And then he'll cry. Yes, he'll accuse Sesame Street of being Moloch, and then he'll start crying. And before I get into this confusing god, first, a physical description. There are, for some reason, loads of 18th and 19th century Western depictions of this weird god, and basically they all boil down to this. Imagine the U.S. Farm Bureau started sending out a nightmarish advent calendar to promote the festive 12 days of beef. Seriously. All the depictions are of an anthropomorphized ox from the waist up, standing upright, wearing a very modest dress, with arms outstretched, ending in human hands, a big arched door in the groin area, inside of which is a fire, and in its chest and belly a number of little hatches opened up very much in the style of a Farm Bureau beef advent calendar. And if you don't believe me, Google it.
I just did, and it's great.
Right? Isn't it nuts? It's so silly.
Oh, my God.
So Moloch is mentioned just 8 times by name in the Bible and kind of inferred a few more times. Once in the Book of Kings, just once in Jeremiah, and 5 times in the most enjoyable chapter of the Old Testament, our old friend Leviticus. So Moloch is just before the weasels, but after the ossifrages.
Right.
So remember in episode number 77 when we were talking about the rather shaky origins of the Christian concept of hell? And one of the actual places that led to that contrived notion of a fiery forever for anyone who doesn't go to your neighborhood church, that place being Gehenna. And as we discussed in that episode, Gehenna, which is now a very lovely bit of parkland in Jerusalem where people take picnics, became the combination garbage dump and disposal site for the deceased indigent population of the greater Jerusalem metro area. And so it was a nightmarish, smoldering stink pile overrun with stray dogs feeding on garbage and human flesh. But the reason
like you do.
Like you do. You got to have a place to put all that shit.
Not unlike West Valley here in our fire fair.
Unlike Taylorsville on the outskirts of Salt Lake City. So the reason it was thought suitable to use as a dump was because of its prior use as the valley where the temple of Moloch stood. And according to the Bible and its early adherents, this huge iron or bronze ox lady chest of drawers god was basically a furnace into which sacrifices were tossed, and very particular sacrifices, guys. This is why our pious Mormon friend Glenn Beck thinks the Department of Education is like unto Moloch. For that which was sacrificed in his flaming bovine interior was children. Living children.
Like you do.
Like you did. So this causes such horrors in godly Christians, folks, that it does is hardly surprising. Because if true, and again, the jury is still kind of out, it speaks of a barbaric and gruesome past where human sacrifice was considered a good thing. Like I said, it's not surprising, but it is just a tad ironic as their very own white American Jesus was himself a human sacrifice in their cult of death, mortification, and blood magic. And on any given Sunday anywhere in the world where there's a steeple, you might be likely to hear the story of Abraham and Isaac told with hushed reverence. The story of the father of the 3 great religions was so fucking down to human sacrifice his own son, he didn't even bother to ask God if he heard him correctly.
Yeah, but sure. that was the great psych out. That wasn't that wasn't an actual human sacrifice. That was like a big old psych, and then
it was a near miss.
It was a great joke. It was genuinely a good trick, though. Let's be honest.
But sure, boo, ancient Canaanites and their primitive sacrificial rites.
Right.
Big caveat for this whole story. Although the Bible says, Moloch was a big cow-shaped furnace that babies were thrown into wholesale by people who hated Jesus, who wasn't born yet. There is a ton of disagreement about pretty much everything surrounding Moloch, including the nature and frequency of human sacrifice, his origins, and even his name, which is weird because, as we all know, the Bible is the inerrant, unchanging, totally coherent Word of God. Shut up. So the name Moloch itself might just be a misuse of Melech, which simply means king, which was a term that was commonly tacked onto the front of the names of most of the Canaanite gods. So Moloch is likely a conflation of more than one god or idea, and a little more uncomfortably for our good Christian friends, whatever Moloch was, sitting as he did within a literal stone's throw from the walls of Jerusalem, he was most likely just another of the dizzying profusion of Israelite gods that their one true God kept getting so very fucking mad about.
Right.
As we've explored exhaustively on this podcast, right?
And not for nothing, kept acknowledging. Like, it's not like he was just, like, the God of Israel was not just mad that they were worshiping these gods. He kept saying, stop it, those guys are not as good as me. Like, he acknowledged that they were real.
Yep.
He just didn't. He just didn't like them very much.
Yeah, exactly. He knew that they existed in the same way he existed, right? And that was what made him so mad. Like, if they were just statues, why would he give a fuck? Right. So many and many other scholars believe the cult of Moloch was actually an Israelite cult of human sacrifice to Yahweh, known these days as simply God.
Yeah.
So one line of disagreement is whether or not there were high numbers of actual sacrifices. One is certainly too many, but the Bible, the biblical descriptions and Christians have taken on that it was just a slaughterhouse with a conveyor belt.
I don't know. I will say this: you say one is too many, but I've been to Disneyland, and every now and then there are a couple that you could throw in there, and it'd be all right.
Oh, go to a Costco on a Saturday.
It's trust me, there's a few kids that we could let Moloch have if we needed to.
Yeah, I'll pull my Moloch around on a trailer and we'll just get it right there, so.
Your Moloch mobile.
So, yeah, it's like the mobile spay neuter clinic, right? So translations from the ancient sources are, as we know, fraught, and it may be that rather than being thrown into the fire and killed, children in Moloch country were passed or walked between two fires unharmed as a cleansing initiation or februation. Yes, that's a real word, meaning a cleansing ceremony or act. And yes, that is where the word February comes from. It was the Roman rituals of purification called februa that typically were held on the 15th of that month that inspired the name. So the more you know.
Wow.
So februations aside.
There you go.
In addition to the sketchy and essentially almost unreliable ancient texts, there is serious scholarship and actual science that has demonstrated some level of child sacrifice in the Phoenician/Canaanite world, specifically in Carthage in North Africa. Several ancient historians, independent of each other, describe horrific scenes of children being burned alive. One of them was Cleitarchus, and he has a fairly graphic description from Carthage, which was a Canaanite colony, and he was there in 146 BCE. Warning, graphic imagery to follow. And this is him. There stands in the midst a bronze statue of Kronos. Quick note, Kronos would be the Greek equivalent of the Canaanite Baal Hammon, which is another possible origin of the Moloch story. Its hands extended over a bronze brazier, the flames of which engulf the child. When the flames fall upon the body, the limbs contract and the open mouth seems almost to be laughing until contracted body slips quietly into the brazier. Thus is that the, quote, grin is known as sardonic laughter, since they die laughing. And for those wondering what the fuck sardonic laughter is, it is a doozy. It is a real thing from the Latin rissus sardonicus, also known as the rictus grin. And it is a smile-like appearance that can occur upon death, especially from hanging or burning.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
I really hope that happens. Fuel. I really hope if I die in some gruesome way, I hope I go out creepily smiling. I like that idea.
Something tells me you will.
I feel like it. I feel like if any of us do, it's going to be me, right?
It's going to be you. So you're welcome for the nightmare fuel of thinking of a smiling child burning alive. So
Jesus.
And here's a description from the explaining the Advent-style openings in the Burning Death Cow.
Oh, good. I'm really wondering about these.
From Colin de Plancy's 1865 French illustrated demonology, Dictionnaire Infernal. And he says, Moloch was the god of the Ammonites, portrayed as a bronze statue with a calf's head, adorned with a royal crown and seated on a throne. His arms were extended to receive the child victims sacrificed to him. Milton wrote that Moloch was a frightening and terrible demon covered with mother's tears and children's blood.
Jesus.
Rabbis claim that in the famous statue of Moloch, there were 7 kinds of cabinets. The first was for flour. The second, it's like one of those things in your kitchen, right? Flour, sugar, coffee.
Oh my God, I want this in my kitchen.
Oh my God, we should
You
make
want
a
a Moloch spice rack?
Yes, so much like more than anything I've ever wanted as a kitchen device. I want this thing
We're
more
gonna
than
make this happen.
all of my Instant Pot money is now going directly to my Moloch cabinet now.
Your Moloch kitchen caddy.
Yeah,
So the first was for flour. The second was for turtle doves.
sure.
The third for, and it says this, an-u, A-N space E-W-E.
Yes, and you.
And-u. The fourth for a ram. The fifth for a calf. The sixth for a beef.
A beef?
A beef. And the seventh for a child.
So
It is because of this Moloch is associated with Mithras and his 7 mysterious gates with 7 chambers. When a child was sacrificed to Moloch, a fire was lit inside the statue. The priests would then beat loudly on drums and other objects so the cries would not be heard.
And clearly, then they would use the different cabinets to make a lovely shepherd's pie.
Well, here's
Yeah, you
a
just
question
put
I've got. Is the beef, is that a cow? Or is that
Yes,
just
the
kind of
beef,
a
I
long-running
think-
disagreement you've got with somebody?
That's where you put your quibbles. Yeah, it sounds like it's kind of a tandoori, Dan.
Yeah,
It's a
I mean,
little
it sounds like
brick oven.
It feels like you could get a really nice, or maybe if you take out your beef and your ewe and your ram and everything, you could use them for raclette, which would be delicious.
Yeah, it sounds delicious. So archaeological digs in Carthage support a fairly high number of child sacrifices since numerous children's bones have been found mixed in with animal bones in pits. The historian Diodorus Siculus, that's the real name.
Is
Diodorus
he
Siculus.
related to
Speed stick?
Yeah, I couldn't come up with the word.
Pope
Never mind.
Simplicius. Anyway, he describes a gruesome scenario in Carthage where the nobles had developed a workaround for having to sacrifice their own precious little ones, which was buying or just stealing poor children to burn alive. After they were
the way
defeated,
to do it.
I mean, seriously, like, have we learned nothing? After they were defeated by the Greek general Agathocles, they decided that they had displeased Kronos or Baal Haman or Moloch or whoever the fuck. So in a fever of religious repentance and piety, they killed 300 of their own highborn children in a single fugue of insanity. So whoever or whatever Moloch was, cowman god, Canaanite Israelite, or just a big iron furnace, it's good he's dead. And even though the Bible really has no clear idea who or what Moloch was, the idea of a god like this is once again proof that nobody should take seriously the morals of the stories of people who were apt to believe in shit like this seriously, right? So
Yeah.
it was a fucking horrible time, haunted by no end of horrible ideas, human sacrifice being just one of them. And I think it is depressing that, to this day, human sacrifice is still celebrated by far too many people wearing crucifixes around their nexus? around their Lexus. Who maybe ought to think a little bit more about the origins of the stories they're prepared to kill or die for. So
Right.
let us bid farewell, guys, to the ghastly iron cow cupboard Moloch and stick his rusty, murderous ass back under the ground forever and ever in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
So they would put. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of trying to wrap my head around this. In these seven cabinets, they would put live animals. 5 live animals, a little baby, and some flour. Yes,
And some flour.
And they'd light this on
That's-
fire and kill all of them at once.
Well, it's like the Wicker Man, right? It's
Yeah.
It seems efficient, is what it seems.
It just. Are you? Yeah, it's like a convenience thing. It's like a shampoo conditioner combination.
I mean, think of the technological advancement this represented, right? This was a multi-platform pan-sacrifice delivery
right.
machine.
It's
I
a
just-
one-stop
right.
sacrifice.
I can
That's
see
right.
how you might get NU in it, but I want to know how they got the beef in.
A beef.
A beef.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I don't know. It was a simpler time, guys. So,
Ugh,
but
gruesome.
Well,
thank God it's over.
Yeah.
yes, thanks for that. We'll all have nightmares now. Let's move on.
Bye, Moloch.
Uncle Dan.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Do you remember when we were youngsters?
I remember when Rock was young.
Back,
Me and
me and
Susie.
Susie had so much fun.
Oh, it was a
Who do you think Susie was?
Who do
But
you,
do you
who do I
remember?
think?
Susie was actually a guy named Ron.
Yeah, exactly.
Back when we were youth, there used to be a thing on the TV that would come on at 10 o'clock at night that would say, "It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?" Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know why I was
creepy
thinking
and
about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a good thing you thought about that because I want to talk about a parent who did not know where his daughter was for a good 9 months.
Oh,
Sure.
That's going to be a lot of fun. I can feel that we're about to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is a pretty fun
Like
one.
like me and Susie.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're sometimes pretty hard on religion on this podcast. And it's pretty much our stated position that religion, at the very best, tarnishes anything good, and at worst is a needlessly destructive force that causes massive damage to everything it touches.
Well, I need to see more proof of that.
Exactly. Lest anybody listening to our voices think that we are being too hard on religion. It's that it's a good environment to raise children, that, there's some bad stuff, but it's better than no belief system. Well, hypothetical listener, today's segment is for you. We're going to talk about a true story, one that is unfolding actually as we speak, that pretty much demonstrates how religion stains everything and how much better the world would be without it. Today we're going to talk about Elizabeth Smart and her father, Ed.
Yeah.
We're going to tread really lightly here because all the people we're going to talk about are still alive.
Yes.
And some of them are victims of incredible trauma, the likes of which we cannot
This
imagine.
is a true horrible family.
Yep.
tragedy.
Gentlemen, these are Mormons. They're all victims of trauma.
That's right. That's right.
true. That's
Yeah.
not even a joke.
No.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And were it not for the fact that this saga has reemerged in a wholly predictable but unexpected way, it would be just another tragic and sad chapter from Utah/Mormon history. However, just a couple of days ago,
Just another portrait John McNaughton forgot to paint.
That's right. Just a couple of days ago, Elizabeth's father, Ed, 64 years old, stunned the world with the admission that he is indeed a gay man.
Stunned literally zero people.
Right.
So I tried to fake a gasp there, and I couldn't even do it.
Right. The fact that he's a gay man is not much of a surprise to those of us who followed this saga back in 2002. While his daughter was kidnapped, Ed would make nearly daily appearances to the press in his driveway. How can I put this correctly? Well, he really seemed gay, right?
Yeah.
So,
Basically, it was like Corky Sinclair
Yes,
giving
much so.
press conferences about a kidnapping.
yeah,
And then mentioning that
Seriously.
he buys all of his wife's clothes.
that's right. Yeah, and so it's not a surprise to find out that our suspicions were correct. What was surprising is that he himself admitted it. He was not caught in flagrante in some airport restroom or some blackmail scheme. Ed made the considered decision to publicly come out, in spite of how the story would be received by his friends, family, and the world at large. Most of us ex-Mormons know older men and women who are married in the church with children who are obviously gay but will never come out and will die, therefore repressed and pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Such is the shame and ostracization that come with admitting that you are who you are to those who are supposed to love you unconditionally. So, before we dive into the story of Ed, we need to go back and talk about his daughter, Elizabeth, which is why we know Ed and the Smart family.
Yeah, we really shouldn't know anything about these people.
Right.
We should have known. This is just a boring family.
Yep.
Until
Yeah. Back in 2002, when a 14-year-old Elizabeth was kidnapped right out of her bedroom and disappeared into the foothills around Salt Lake City.
In a very high-end neighborhood.
Very high-end neighborhood, correct. And this is a pretty touchy subject, so most of the source material I'm using is from Elizabeth Smart herself, in the form of her book, My Story, pardon me, and the surprisingly good A&E movie, I Am Elizabeth Smart, which actually starred Skeet Ulrich as Mitchell, who we'll talk about, and Deidre Lovejoy from The Wire as Barzee, and an incredible actress named Alana Bowden as Elizabeth Smart.
Wait, Skeet Ulrich played the manual?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow,
then the
interesting.
whole thing is narrated by Elizabeth Smart herself, so we'll talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and avoid any inappropriate speculation, but there are some gaps that can only be filled with speculation, so we'll just tread as lightly as we feel we need to.
Okay. Yeah.
So the kidnapping made national news. It didn't hurt that she was white, but also the very idea that a child could be the victim of a kidnapping in their own room next to her sleeping sister while her parents are downstairs watching TV is the stuff of nightmares. So I'm just going to jump ahead real quick and tell everybody that 9 months later, she was found alive and at least physically fairly healthy.
Yeah, that was unfucking believable.
I almost drove off the road when I heard it.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I had CNN on, I was cleaning the house, and I had CNN on the TV, and I've never seen this happen on CNN before or since. Like in the oldie-timey news times, a hand came from off-screen with a piece of paper and handed it to Wolf Blitzer.
Wow.
Who read Elizabeth Smart has been found alive and well in Salt Lake City. I was like, what?
Well, I mean, we were all shocked because we all knew for a fact that girl was dead. Like,
of course.
That's just...
nationally, less than 2% of long-term kidnapping victims are ever found alive.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
All right, so before we talk about Elizabeth, we need to go back a little bit further and talk about one Brian David Mitchell, a.k.a. Emmanuel, Elizabeth's kidnapper, captor, and rapist. Mitchell was born in Salt Lake in 1953 to a Mormon household with an abusive and very strange father. His life was marked by failed marriages, way too many children, accusations of physical and sexual abuse by some of his wives and children, and drug and alcohol abuse. He, at one point, even kidnapped 2 of his kids for a short period when he lost custody. So... let's just say he had a type and a pattern. Here's a fun tidbit. One of his stepchildren from the second marriage told her mother that Mitchell had sexually abused her for 4 years. Instead of alerting authorities, she told her LDS leadership, who advised her to forget about it. So, could have been stopped.
Yeah.
So, upon divorcing his second wife, he immediately married Wanda Barzee, who was divorced herself with 6 children.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, right? And just to be clear, Barzee is not a victim in this story. In fact, Smart would go on to say that she was even crueler and more evil than Mitchell. So the couple threw themselves into the Mormon church. Mitchell, as Uncle Mark brought this up one time in the past episode, Mitchell was actually played Satan in the endowment ceremony in the Salt Lake Temple, which is
God, that's right.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that. Oh my God.
And for just a tiny bit of background on that, it's kind of like a little bit of a passion play you do as a kind of ritual in the Mormon church. There's an actor who plays God and Jesus and Satan, and yeah.
But it's kind of like a high honor to be allowed to do this.
It's a bit of a big deal. And he was apparently his portrayal was so unnerving, he was fired.
Apparently a general authority saw it and was like, get that guy out of here.
Right?
Yeah, when you're playing Satan and everybody's like, that's too crazy, that's too creepy. Maybe somebody watch that guy a little extra close.
Apparently he would like writhe on the floor like a snake. Yeah, man.
Yeah, you went too far.
You went a little too far.
For Mormons, that's like
did you guys
22
did you guys
steps
ever
too far.
Did you guys ever give him money?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's really a missed opportunity in the Mormon church that there's not an award show for the actors that play in the temple ceremonies. The anti-Nephi Lehi Awards or something like that.
The Mormies.
The Mormies. It's a little Moroni statue. Yeah. Leonis. So by the 1990s, Mitchell had changed his name to Emmanuel and separated from the Mormon church. He grew out his beard and claimed that he was a prophet. Barzee renamed herself, let me get this wrong, Hevzibah, which apparently means God adorneth. And the two began wearing long white robes. And this is, as Uncle Mark said, this is where we come into the story. Because everyone in Salt Lake City at that time knew these two.
Yeah, everybody saw these people. They were everywhere.
And they were all over downtown. They stood out like crazy. They're very, very strange. And yeah, I gave him money on one occasion.
I never gave him money. But I mean, they looked like, it was like, you know, you just thought they were Hare Krishnas or something.
Something like that.
He looked like an Old Testament prophet, and that the only reason I gave him money was because he put a little showbiz into it. Right. I'm like, okay, you got a costume. That's good. Here's a quarter.
And what's so crazy about what's about to happen is that the two most widely recognizable faces in all of Utah were together in this period of time, and no one would recognize them. It's very strange.
Yeah, super weird.
Now, Ed, now being a confirmed closeted homosexual, had a habit of hiring homeless men to do odd jobs around their quite nice house. So I'm not going to speculate whether his repressed sexual impulses inform that habit or not, but in any case, one of these homeless men he hired was one Brian David Mitchell. Mitchell worked on the roof of their house for a single day, but it was enough to get eyes on young Elizabeth and get the lay of the land. He apparently spoke to Elizabeth and her younger sister for at least a moment or two, a fact that will come into play a little bit later on. So, early on June 5th, 2002, Mitchell cut through the screen of Elizabeth's bedroom window and entered the room. Elizabeth was asleep next to her little sister. and Mitchell woke her up by holding a knife to her neck and a hand over her mouth. He told her not to scream or he would kill her and her family. Her sister did wake up during this, but was so terrified that she didn't get out of bed. She was paralyzed by fear for a couple hours after the fact. The very, very critical and crucial hours.
Yeah.
So Mitchell took Elizabeth into the foothills around Salt Lake, where he had made camp with Barzee. They immediately forced her to put on a robe, and Mitchell performed some kind of marriage ceremony, at which point he raped her. This may have happened even before her parents knew she was missing. In the film, this rape is depicted graphically and unflinchingly, and then it cuts immediately to Elizabeth herself looking directly into the camera. It's intense.
Whoa.
And this was an A&E. This wasn't like, right?
A&E,
this was on basic cable. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Mitchell would go on to rape her every single day of her 9-month captivity, sometimes multiple times. The fact that she survived and is an outspoken and honest advocate for victims' rights about this, she's a truly remarkable person, honestly.
Yeah.
So when news broke the next day, search parties were formed with several thousand volunteers combing the area. I never did one of the search parties, but I know a ton of people who did. Did either of you guys go join in the search?
No.
No. Elizabeth says she heard the search parties calling her name on several occasions. She was so close. The reason she did not cry out or try to escape later in her captivity when they cut off her chain was by her admission, partly out of fear for her life and partly because of the guilt of having been raped. She had been told by teachers in the Mormon church that once a woman had given up her virginity, she was like a chewed up piece of gum that nobody would want anymore. Yeah. That was the specific language. The more Mitchell raped her, the more valueless she felt, and the more she was convinced she would have no place in her former life. Mitchell also forced her to drink and take drugs, which also played into her feelings of guilt and alienation.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. She was very clearly part of the cult that we were all raised in taught her that until that she had value until she was in any way besmirched, and then fuck it.
Yeah, you've used it up.
Yeah, and by the way, I heard an interview with Elizabeth Smart where yes, she got that shit in church like all of us did, but she specifically said she got it from a teacher in her public school.
Yeah.
Jesus.
That a teacher at Salt Lake City's East High School, and I don't know who that teacher was, fucking said that to her in public school.
Jesus.
Well, but but let's be clear that teacher was likely also Mormon.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, almost 100% likely. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So the full details of her captivity are a little long to cover here, but there are some incredible moments that are worth mentioning. On a couple of occasions, she came so close to being exposed and saved that it's heartbreaking. Mitchell forced her to wear a veil and at one point took her and Barzee to the Salt Lake Public Library to research routes to California. Someone, alarmed by the sight of this kook with two veiled women, called the police, and an officer actually spoke to them. Mitchell claimed that his religion forbade his women from removing their veils or speaking in public, and because this is Utah, and because of the fact that wackadoo polygamous cults are a dime a dozen, and due to the fact that buried in the DNA of all men in Utah is the notion that women are actually property, the cop let them go.
Yep.
So another crazy moment that blew everyone away once it was exposed was their appearance at a local party house called China Blue. This is like a rundown house near downtown Salt Lake City that hosted drug-fueled ragers. I've been to a party there.
Oh, yeah.
Once upon a time. Mitchell and Barzee took Elizabeth to a party there where Elizabeth was even photographed. The person taking the photo was only gawking at freaks, and it wasn't until after she was found that it came out.
Wow.
Wasn't it also a Halloween party?
It might have been.
I think that was part of it, is that everybody was in costume, I think, and so nobody thought too much of it.
And China Blue is no place for any 14-year-old girl. For a 14-year-old Mormon girl, it must have been as terrifying as the alternative, right?
Yeah.
In Mormonism, a person who has a glass of port at Christmas is exactly equal to Walter White.
Yeah, it's basically that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if she had just simply lifted her veil and screamed out, she would have been rescued. But to her adolescent Mormon brain, the people smoking weed were just as evil as the man raping her. So she didn't cry out, and no one recognized them.
That's a good point. Like, she would have. Somebody there would have. They would have done something, for sure.
Yeah.
Her face was so in the news.
If she had said the words, "I am Elizabeth Smart," quietly to herself, the guy she was with would have been tackled instantly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and her picture was on every telephone pole and storefront in town, right? It was still,
national
those
news.
posters were still up everywhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
After 3 months, Mitchell stopped chaining Elizabeth up at all. Such were the physical restraints, or the psychological restraints that he placed on her. He then dragged them to the California desert outside of San Diego, where Elizabeth and Barzee flirted with starvation while Mitchell sojourned into town to steal booze and keep himself nearly perpetually drunk. At one point, Mitchell broke into a church, got drunk on the sacramental wine, and got himself arrested. And in his week-long absence, Elizabeth and Barzee came awfully damn close to starving.
Wow.
Seriously close. So during the captivity, Ed and the family managed to keep Elizabeth in the news, which they thought correctly was the only hope they had of finding her.
Yeah.
Mostly they did this by Ed's aforementioned press conferences in his driveway. Finally, her sister managed to remember that the kidnapper's voice was that of a homeless guy that worked on their roof. The police were skeptical, but the family had a sketch done, and once it was publicized in the press, Mitchell's family recognized him. So now the police knew who the kidnapper was.
Holy cow.
Yeah, right? Well, it was a very strange thing. It was like 6 months later, the little sister's like, wait a minute, I remember who it was.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, memory's really fucking strange.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's one of those things where it's like, I would be, if I'm a cop in that situation and I'm going off of like 6 months after and it's a little girl's memory.
Yeah, you're
and
like,
stuff,
yeah,
I'd be
whatever.
like, I mean,
yeah.
draw us a picture if you want to. Let's see what we can do. But like, I'm not holding out any hope on that.
Exactly.
Right.
So in the ninth month of her captivity, Mitchell and Barzee decided to head back to Utah, where on March 12th, 2003, police finally recognized them, and this part of her ordeal ended.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Mitchell initially tried to plead insanity due to his delusion that he was a prophet of God. I just love how
Which
religion
seems-
helps out in this
That
scenario.
seems legit, actually,
Right.
at this point. Like, I would almost buy that.
And that decision about his competency delayed the sentencing until 2010. So it was almost 8 years later before he was actually tried.
Wow.
He was
it
finally
that long?
Yeah, it was that long.
That's ridiculous.
He was finally convicted of kidnapping and transporting a minor across state lines with intent to engage in sexual activity, which is now referred to as the full Epstein. He is serving a life sentence in Tucson, Arizona. Barzee pled guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison.
Why is he in Arizona?
I'm not exactly sure why it ended up in Arizona. It was because they crossed state lines, and it might just be that that's the penitentiary that he ended up in.
Well,
He's in federal pen, right?
Yeah,
That's
once he crossed the state lines, it became a federal thing.
Yeah, and it
federal
wasn't
crime,
the state of Utah. The state of Utah never figured out how to
Well,
prosecute him.
kidnapping is a federal crime anyway, right?
Right.
I don't know.
I think.
Barzee served her time.
Don't take legal advice from a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Barzee actually was released from prison in September of 2018, a decision that Elizabeth Smart obviously protested.
It's good that she's out on the street. She's
She's
a
rehabilitated. Smart would go on to be a child safety activist. She founded the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. She got married. She had 2 kids. It's pretty remarkable that she managed to make the recovery that she's made, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and then this brings us to last week, when Ed posted a letter on Facebook acknowledging the fact that he is and always has been a gay man. This letter is pretty sad and painful to read, mostly because of the shocking reality of anti-gay sentiment in the Mormon Church today.
Yeah.
Here's a couple quotes from that letter. This is one of the hardest letters I have ever written. Hard because I am finally acknowledging a part of me that I have struggled with most of my life and never wanted to accept, but I must be true and honest with myself. It is in this same spirit that I wish to share the news that I have recently acknowledged to myself and my family that I am a gay man. The decision to be honest and truthful about my orientation comes with its own set of challenges, but at the same time, it's a huge relief. I have mostly watched in silence for years as many LGBTQ individuals, both in and out of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, have been victims of ridicule, shunning, rejection, and outright humiliation. I didn't want to face the feelings I fought so hard to suppress, and didn't want to reach out to tell those being ostracized that I too am numbered among them, but I cannot do that any longer. Some will say that I have wasted my years here by not coming out sooner. Others have said you're giving up so much for so little, and you know how the Lord feels about gays. They have concluded that I've chosen to waste my remaining years by leaving behind some rich and amazing gifts. Both are inaccurate and fail to do justice to the deep conflict involved in not being honest with myself and others for so long. Acknowledging I am a gay man is freeing, but it also hurts many of those whom I love very much. So,
God damn it.
This is the last quote from here. Yeah, that's it. That's basically, I won't keep reading. It's just really fucking sad. You know, he's 64 years old. He's been lying to himself the entire time.
And that's 93 in gay years. So
He's a yestergay. No, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of two minds of that. Like, I want to be as completely generous as I can possibly muster here and say, living some truth in your life is better than living none but so welcome, Ed, and I'm glad you finally have the courage or wherewithal to do this. But at the same time, dude, you were part of a fucking hate group that focused, so much derision and money on fighting against your brothers and sisters in the, under the rainbow. Mm. And you paid, you had a large income and you paid a lot of tithing towards that fight. So part of me is like, dude, go fuck yourself. Right. But the other part is he is a victim of this traumatizing ideology.
Yeah. I mean, he's the victim of gaslighting. It is an organization.
Self-hatred, shame, just the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Truly, is there any part of this sad story that was made better by religion? Let's take an inventory. Right? No. Mitchell was clearly a mentally unwell, deranged man. So add to that the belief that God was talking to him and that women are in fact property. That fucking 14-year-old women is kind of acceptable behavior in this religion.
Children is the word.
Exactly. He may have been stopped much earlier were it not for religious leaders unwilling to confront abuse. Yeah. Barzee was clearly a cruel and abusive person, further deranged by her religious zealotry.
Yeah.
No one can know the terror that Elizabeth felt during her captivity, but by her own admission, she did not flee, in part because now she wasn't a virgin. And her captivity could have been shortened were it not for the fact that in our fucked up religious society, seeing women forced to cover their faces and forbidden from speaking is just something you see on the street and not a cause to call the police.
Yeah, or it is a cause to call the police, and then the police are fine.
And they don't do anything about it.
That's a moment where the police officer needed to say, women, whatever your religious belief is, I need you to now tell me that you're okay.
I don't give a flying fuck about your stupid ass religion.
Yeah.
I need to see this person is not a kidnap victim.
Yeah, you need to show me your face and you need to tell me that you're okay.
Yeah. So there you go. Real happy story made all the better by religion.
Well, and also a nice old guy who never got to be who he really was until now.
Yeah, and understanding that this is not an isolated case. Yeah. This is happening through the entirety of the religious world.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's I think that's the point you made at the end, Doug, that there is nothing about this story that religion made better.
Right.
And in fact, this story probably, I've always said this about the Elizabeth Smart thing. I think this could only happen in Utah in a weird way, right? Because where else is a girl... He called her through the window. He didn't go in the window and get her, right? He called her to come to him. And only in Utah, I think, would because of the patriarchal bullshit, would a girl be inclined to do that. I think any place else they would scream.
Well, I want to be careful here. By her version of the story is that he came in through the window and woke her up in bed. That's her version.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, I just want to be careful.
She was there.
Nevertheless, she had ample opportunities
to
scream out. And she had been taught, she had also been, yes, the virgin thing, but she had also been taught plenty that it's not a woman's place to speak out against a man, that she had been taken down all of the pegs that religion takes women down.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't want to say that Mark, your point about the patriarchal nature of this state 100% played into her state of mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah,
sure.
All right. Well, good for religion, I guess. And let's
welcome to the dark side, Ed. Just wish you'd done it. Wish you'd done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Hey, fellas.
Hugh.
We have some folks to thank.
Why don't we do it?
We will. We've done this for 100 episodes, and a few people have decided that it is good. And they looked and beheld that it was good.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And they have decided to chime in with some cash.
And they've moved upon the face of the Support Us tab.
That's right.
Yes.
So we have some people to thank. So... thanks, and I feel like this is really appropriate for this episode. Thanks so much to Daniel.
Ooh.
Thanks to Sam, to William, and to Sarah.
Yay.
So all of you are amazing people. And, the rest of you, listen, we know how many of you listen to this damn show.
Yeah.
So
we can see you. We literally can see you on the map, so knock this shit off.
Yeah, exactly. We're the ones that are sending you that threatening email that we know what your password is, and we've got video of you.
We've seen you during sexy time.
That's right.
Yes.
So if you don't want us to reveal those pictures, go to howtoheretic.com and click on that support tab and help us out. Just throw a little bit into the kitty.
Yep. And if you can't do that, and listen, I know that we have one listener in Guyana, and you are listening to this now.
We know you.
Time to jump in
there.
there with some Guyana money. And we've got one listener in Lebanon. You're a Canaanite. We know what's up. Throw some shekels in. And even if you can't do any of that, wherever you are, 2 listeners in Sri Lanka, you can go to whatever place you can buy stars for free. Hit 5. Hit it again. Don't stop hitting it.
An thing. Some of these listeners can't do that because they're in a country where literally, like, they could be put in jail or put to death if they're found listening to an atheist show.
Totally worth the risk.
What I'm saying is, all of you who live in the comfort of some swanky first world country that has, at least for a little while longer, some freedom of religion.
That's right. We're looking at you, Greenland.
Pick up the slack for those who can't jump in. So
we're really looking at you, Greenland. We want you.
We are that. You're ours now. You belong to us.
That's right. So do what you can, and we'll keep doing what we do. We're going to keep on keeping on, and let's move on.
Let's do it.
Uncle Mark.
Yeah. Yep.
It's kind of a truism in the film industry that sequels are never as good as the original.
Well, is that a truism?
You've got your Empire Strikes Backs. You've got your Blades 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, anyone who says that has never seen Ernest Goes to Camp.
Nor have they seen Staying Alive, which was the amazing sequel to Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on.
Yeah, well, just because I'm a Travolta fanatic. I mean, you guys know that. But so are you, Doug, because you went to see Battlefield Earth on opening day.
I was the one.
Yeah.
That was you.
That was a lonely theater.
I was so excited and very stoned, and we got there early to make sure we could get in, and we were the only 2 people in the theater.
You got there early.
I was convinced this was going to be a big fucking deal, all right? I thought it was going to be a big deal.
The box office take for that weekend was $16.50.
It's my meager dollars.
It's amazing. I love that. I actually love that movie. It's so fucking terrible. It's incredible.
Speaking of sequels,
yes.
Uncle Dan has a sequel for us today.
Aha! That's right,
Yeah.
because 2 weeks ago I did this the first part of the book of Daniel.
And today is Daniel Destroys Christmas.
That's right.
The amazing holiday sequel.
Daniel Part 2.
Yeah.
Revenge of Shadrach.
The re-Danieling.
Okay, so when we last left the book of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had just gotten out of a hot situation. Mm-hmm. And Nebuchadnezzar was so impressed by them that he said, quote, "Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue this way."
I just have a quick point.
Yeah.
Once you've been torn limb from limb, do you really care about your property anymore?
Oh, yeah. You definitely do.
Doesn't that just seem like insult to injury kind of needlessly?
You're like, tear off my arms, but leave my house. What are you doing?
Then we will kill your lawn.
You know that Mike Pence has that injunction in bill form that he keeps trying to slip into Donald Trump's inbox and get signed?
Yeah, exactly.
I just feel like, how long... I mean, okay, this is the Bible, right? Where everyone has instant amnesia at all times. But when the king of the biggest country in the universe says that, it feels like there's no need for the rest of the Bible. We're done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that could be said without modification on every page of the Bible.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It just keeps happening, and we'll just demonstrate that.
There's
amply.
really no need for any of it, but yet here it is.
But yet here it is. So yes, Uncle Nebuchadnezzar is super on board with the Hebrew God now.
Yeah.
Does he convert?
And we stop short of that.
Okay.
But definitely you're not allowed to say anything bad about this God.
Scene missing.
Yeah. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are bound for fame and glory forever, right? JK, we don't even know them. We don't even know them by their Hebrew names anymore. If they were going to be famous, we'd know them as Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Don't at me about those pronunciations. We know that because the rest of the book we'll keep saying things like, then the king went to Belteshazzar, who was Daniel. So we know that Daniel gets to keep his Hebrew name, and they just have to keep clarifying. Anyway, now we get to the part of the book that I had never heard before, which is Nebuchadnezzar's second dream. It's a dumb dream, but the outcome is special.
Point of order, all dreams are dumb, but yes.
Well, and biblical dreams double that. Nebi dreamt that there was a tree that grew so tall it could be seen from everywhere on this great flat earth of ours, and it had a lot of branches and a lot of fruit and provided a lot of shade, blah, blah, blah. It's boring. But the upshot is that a voice comes and says, let the tree be cut down and a stump remain. And then it says, and I'm confused by this too, let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Who, him? The tree? The stump? Which him are we talking about here? And there hasn't been a him in the dream yet.
What is the dew of heaven?
Fuck you. That's what it is.
Probably got a category.
You're probably really close to that. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's rain, but whatever. It's heaven dew. Anyway, here's a quote. Let his portion. This is about that him that we don't know who he is. Let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him, and let 7 periods of time pass over him.
So this is when Nebuchadnezzar went out into the fields and lived as a beast, right? Yeah, I mean, there was a period where he
thank you for. I was telling the story, but you can go ahead and take over if you want to.
Should I just go from here?
Fight!
Just go ahead if you want to. I mean, I wrote a bunch of stuff out and stuff.
You guys have no idea how often we fight about the Bible. All right, Cody, fix all that.
So Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, is called in, and he repeats the whole dream. Thanks, Bible. And then interprets it, though he's nervous about it, and with good reason, because what he has to say is that what he has to say to the most powerful king in the world is this: you, powerful king, are the tree. You're so big, you're the king of everything, but God wants you to know that he's in charge, and you're the only king of everything. You're only the king of everything because he lets you be that. So he's going to make you leave all the people, and you're going to have to live in a field like an animal and eat grass and get rained on for 7 periods of time, however much that is. And then...
but could a period of time be a second?
It could be.
So you've got to live in the grass for 7 seconds.
But it's not, because we know, because I'll tell you something later. Anyway, then you can come back and your kingdom will be waiting for you. Apparently this does not piss off the king so much that he has Daniel killed. That's a theme. And then a year passes... And so there you go. It literally happens. Nebuchadnezzar is walking on the roof of his palace, literally telling himself what an amazingly huge kingdom he had, and it was all because he himself was so big and awesome. And then God was like, "Ha, not so fast." And boom. Here's a quote. He was driven from among men and ate grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird's claws.
Okay, scratch. What happened?
Yeah.
Like, he was king. Mighty king.
He's the king, and then somehow, and we don't have any explanation for this.
Oh, my God.
He was driven from among men and just was a cow for a 7 whatever.
He basically was caused to go insane is the idea, and then he lived like an animal out in the field.
Yeah.
So the kingdom just kind of carried on without him? Is that...
Guess so.
I mean, we're seeing this play out live in front of us now, right? At some point, you're just like, yeah, he's fucking insane.
Well, I mean, here's the thing.
The mail still has to get delivered, right?
We know who one of his right-hand men was, and that is this Hebrew dude, Daniel, which, let's just say that there are a few parts of this story that cause me to reflect on what Daniel might have been doing at any given moment of the story. Anyway, the kingdom's fine when he gets back. And here's a weird thing. Oh, and also I did want to mention, I feel like if there really was a God, this kind of humbling of despotic leaders would be a really great thing to introduce back into the repertoire. I'm just saying.
Right about now.
Right about now.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
But Donald Trump would swallow his tongue if he had to eat grass. I mean,
great. Fantastic. I don't see a downside to any of this. Anyway.
He's out on the grass 3 times a week.
That's true. So he comes back, and they're just like, okay, welcome back, King.
That is correct, sir.
This is a strange country.
Yeah. And strangely, the book switches right in that moment from being written in third person omniscient to being suddenly written from Nebuchadnezzar's point of view. It's now first person, and he's
really?
like, and basically I guess it's so that we get him saying, "Whoo, boy, that Hebrew God, he's no joke. We all totally get on board with that guy. I mean, I know I am 100% in that dude's camp now, so yep. It's Yahweh or the highway for me. Now give me back my kingdom," which they did. And he proclaimed unto the whole kingdom that the Lord of God of Hebrews, oops, he's dead. It's literally, suddenly you turn the page and there's a new king. So
I've invested so much in Nebuchadnezzar.
Nope, we've learned nothing, and let's just keep going. Okay, all those lessons are gone, and now his son, Belshazzar, is now the king. Belshi is carousing with his buddies.
Yeah.
Totally drinking out of the gold cups that his dad stole from the temple when he sacked Jerusalem. Remember that? Ha-ha!
Oh, yeah.
The rare biblical callback. When suddenly, they're all carousing, and then a hand appears and writes some shit on a wall. Side note, I wanted to mention I watched an entire awful animated YouTube video of the story of Daniel.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God, it was so bad. I guess because I'm a masochist now, and I don't know what... but when this part came, I got excited because I wanted to see how they did the hand.
Yeah.
Because the Bible actually says something about, like, the fingers of a man's hand appear. Like, what appears is fingers, and not just a finger, but, like, fingers of a hand. Anyway, I think that's super creepy and fun. They just balked on it, and just words just appeared on a wall.
Right.
I was
really?
Like, you sons of bitches.
That's the thing about all of these Bible stories. This book is supposed to be inerrant and perfect.
Yeah.
And the most religious people take huge liberties when they put it onto film.
Oh, yeah.
Right, to make it work.
And what's hilarious is it's animation. You can do anything.
Right.
You can do anything you want.
Yes.
Although these animators clearly cannot do anything.
You cannot do much. Okay, great.
So the fingers write some words that nobody knows and scares the bejesus out of the king. So he orders all the royal smarty pantses to figure out what the holy Banksy was trying to say.
And that's where the term the writing on the wall is on the wall comes from.
That's right. That's right. But they have no fucking clue. So whoever figures it out is going to get a whole slew of amazing cash and prizes, is what the king says. So suddenly the queen pipes up. Wait, there's a queen? What queen? Is that his wife? His mother? No name, obviously. Anyway.
Of course not. It's the Bible. Women don't get names.
Right. So up she pops, Cersei, I'll call her, and says, "Hey, your dad knew a guy who could interpret dreams and explain riddles and solve Rubik's Cubes and shit, so go get him." So they do. Now, apparently enough time has passed that nobody remembers this guy, that the last king had declared in charge of all the wise men and everything.
Right.
But anyway, they go and they get Daniel, and in his usual politic way, he said, "Hey, your dad was so powerful, but he got cocky, so God made him eat grass. You're a little shit, worse than he was. Also, you're drinking out of God's cups, and he hates that. So, here's the words, and here's what they are, and here's what they mean. The words are inky dinky stinky do. JK. They are mene tekel parson, which I'm pretty sure is Aramaic for inky dinky stinky do, but I'm not positive. And here's what they mean. Mene, which is the one word that's repeated. Frankly, if you're writing words on a wall as a code, you don't need to repeat any of them.
Yeah, but it's the same people who wrote the Bible, and all it does is repeat.
Right. So Mene says, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Now, considering the fact that this one was written twice, it feels like you could just stop there. Like,
Right.
if that's part of the message, that's the whole message.
So that one word means all of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, I
It's like aloha, right? It means so much. Or shalom.
yeah. All I'm saying is, disembodied graffiti fingers, learn to build to a climax, please. Anyway, Tekel says you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. And Perez, which, what the fuck ever happened to parson? It literally changes in all of the
no way.
of the translations that I looked at. It changes from one word to another. Why? Anyway, Perez says your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes or the Medes and the Persians. So after hearing that his reign would be over and his kingdom split up and whatever, obviously King Belshazzar in his rage killed Daniel.
Right.
Psych! Nope. He just gave him all those cool cash and prizes, and then, as was promised, he died that night by murder, which is not at all discussed. So, cool. It says he was slain. It doesn't say that he died, in his sleep or whatever. It just says he was slain. Does not mention by whom. Does not mention why. And then Darius, the Median, took over as king.
Yeah.
So, and this is where we get to the only story from Daniel that you likely learned as a kid.
Right.
Darius decided to put 3 guys in charge of the kingdom, one of whom was Daniel, which doesn't make anything about the last story suspicious at all. Right?
Right.
There's nothing, he tells the guy he's going to die, he's killed the next day, and then suddenly he's in charge. Nothing wrong there.
Right.
No. The math checks out.
Right, exactly. Daniel was definitely Darius's boy, and the other in-charge dudes were soups jealous, so they played a really, really, really good trick on him, which is that they got all the royal important people, your royal ambassadors, your prefects, your satraps, your advisors, governors, what have you, except Daniel, of course, because why would he need to be there? To go to the king and say, hey, sign a decree that anybody that prays or asks a favor of any god or any person who isn't you will get thrown into the lion's den. So
Yes.
to this, the king apparently agreed? Why the fuck would you want people praying to you? Like, this sounds terrible, but whatever.
You know that Donald Trump signs that bill every day and
Right.
slips it into his outbox, hoping somehow it will just happen.
Right. Well, someone puts it on in front of him. He signs it, and then they tell him it's done.
Right.
Ooh. My computer. I don't know if our listeners will hear that. I don't know that'll make it through. But my computer just made a very lovely sound.
I didn't hear that, but I heard you. I heard something happen to you, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So anyway, as we learned from Shadrach and friends, this particular round of Hebrews is super loyal to their God. Not always the case in the Bible, but this group, they're down with it. And
Yeah.
even though he knew about the new rule, our Daniel was caught praying. And really, why not? He knew what happened to his 3 buddies. God had helped him out in undeniable ways multiple times.
Right.
I'd be pretty unafraid too. Like, fuck it. If you've seen your friends be thrown into a fiery furnace that was set to 11, you're okay. You're gonna be fine. So
Yes.
he did it. The rest is unfortunately actually just kind of boring and stupid. It's the part that I used to love as a kid, but it's meaningless. Darius is sad that Daniel got tricked, but rules is rules.
Right.
So they throw him in with the lions. Next day, he's fine. Darius is happy that Daniel's okay and chucks the bad guys into the lions.
Yeah.
Apparently, their God didn't save them.
Well, I love the idea too. The king's like, God, I wish there was something I could do here.
Yeah,
I'm, the law's the law. I'm just a king.
I signed it, so
Right.
I guess I'm just
So yeah,
bound by it.
Yep.
So there you go. Darius proclaims throughout the kingdom that everybody has to, quote, fear and reverence Daniel's badass God, which keeps fucking happening.
Right.
And nobody apparently pays any fucking attention. The last verse of Daniel chapter 6 says, "So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian." The end.
What is the fucking point of this book?
However, it is not actually the end of the book.
Oh,
I'm not going to do the rest of the book. Basically, chapters 7 and 8 go back in time to King Belshazzar's time again and fill in the gaps, which to me is just bad storytelling.
were there gaps?
Mess.
Apparently. And the lions were the only part I
Please
ever
tell
really
me he
cared
had
about.
some more dreams. I'd love to hear about those.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? It seems inevitable.
Yeah.
So-
the Bible as dream journal. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so he interprets the dreams. Nothing really comes of that. Shabadoo and Abigidik and Adsmack don't burn.
Right.
Then they're gone.
Then they're never mentioned again.
He interprets the other dream. He wanders in the field, comes back, and dies.
Yeah.
New
Yeah.
king, writing on the wall, dies.
New king.
New king, lion's den, over.
Yeah.
This is a great
Pretty much.
story.
So good. So
Yeah.
good, you guys. But he doesn't get eaten by lions, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And there we have it. That is the beginning of Uncle Dan always feeling a connection to lions.
Really?
Yeah,
Is that
I
true?
mean that, and the fact that I'm a Leo, and if I grow out my hair,
this can't be an accident, right?
I have
This
a
is the
very
universe.
leonine nose, so
This
I
is
feel
the
like
universe telling you something, Dan.
it's got to be right.
Yeah.
There's nothing
to get a lion's den.
Meow. Anyway, I will say this. It is shocking how many times my own fingers misspelled my damn name while I was writing notes on this thing. But other than that, that's where we're at. That's totes the story.
Well, what a pointless waste of time that was.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
What a gripping yarn, and what really critically important moral tales we can take from that.
Yeah, I feel like that's the nice thing is that we know we can.
So let's take a minute and list those.
Yeah.
and we're done.
And shit,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. No, we're done. That was it. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, great. Thanks for Daniel.
You're welcome, everybody. Let's move along.
Let's move on.
Go eat some grass.
Well, friends, that is it for this week's show.
Hey, if you've got a beef you're looking to do with something with, send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Exactly right. And if you've got any kind of horrific demon-based kitchen equipment, please send us a picture on our voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. And you can also leave a voice message on Twitter for me at HowToHeretic.
Oh, and thanks to our awesome patrons.
Yes, and thanks so much. Mark's supposed to say this, but I'm going to just say thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
100 episodes, folks.
And thank you, dear friends, for tuning in. This is Dan's Line.
Bye, friends.
Bye.